All right. Well, I'm here with Eric and Colin of College Premier Prep. Thanks for joining me, guys. How you doing today?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. So I wanted to get started just by asking you guys a little bit about your business, like where are you located and what sort of students do you normally work with?
Yeah, so we're in the suburbs of Philadelphia, northern suburbs, like Fort Washington area. We do almost exclusively SAT and ACT and pretty much all one-on-one tutoring.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what's like a typical course? Like, how long do you usually meet with students, or if it goes to plan, which I know it probably usually doesn't. Like, what is like the ideal?
Yes, I mean we customize it for each student. So we have them start off with, full diagnostic SAT, full diagnostic ACT, and we'll make a custom plan for them. So sometimes for really high scores, it could be as little as like 5 or 6 hours of tutoring. I'd say most commonly what we do though is we always have students target 2 tests because anything can happen on one day. And our most common recommendation is 8 weeks of prep before the first test and 4 more before the second. That's sort of our most common, our standard, if there is a standard. And we do 1.5-hour sessions.
Okay, 1.5 hours. And then how much homework do you guys normally assign in between sessions?
So for most students, we do a full practice test every week. We're big believers in just practice like you play. Get that realistic practice in, and we proctor free tests for all our students every week. So that's just sort of a big part of how we operate. And then in addition to the practice test, we'll give students supplemental work, which at the moment typically consists of something from Mathchops, and then usually an assignment from one of the grammar books that we use.
Nice. And you have, obviously Colin works for you. You have other tutors as well, I think, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So Colin and I both tutor full time, and then we've got a bunch of part timers.
And is it like, do your tutors have a pretty free hand? Or maybe I should ask Colin this. Like, is it like pretty scripted what the tutors do, or are you kind of like, here's your student, see you in 8 weeks kind of thing?
I wouldn't say scripted. We definitely, show them the strategies to teach and whatnot. But for the most part, we don't really want to micromanage how they teach. Like, we'll hire them because they're pretty good tutors to begin with. But want to make sure that, overall they teach the same strategies that we do. So we'll work off like the same guide. When it comes to Mathchops, pretty much they're relatively new at it. So what they know is what I've told them, which is, have them get their score up, and then we just kind of work with it as we go. But yeah, I mean, nothing overly scripted.
Right. Yeah. And then, so before you were using Mathchops, like how were you helping, let's say they took a practice test and you wanted them to work more on math. What were you doing at that point? Were you using like books or worksheets, or like what did you do at that?
Yeah, we did books. We've never gotten much into the curriculum development ourselves, not any more than we have to. It's always kind of one of those things. It's like, oh, we should develop our own materials, and then there's always a bigger or more urgent priority. So we've been using a collection of a wide variety of books over the years. We've tried out all of them basically, and usually what would happen is for some students, we kind of have them work through the book, like a book from start to finish, but that was rare. Most of the math books are just too big. There's too many topics, and we don't meet with students for long enough to really do that. Mm-hmm. So it would always be kind of hopping around, just being like, okay, like have them get the book and be like, okay, do this chapter and this chapter and this chapter based on what we saw in session. That was kind of the way we operated before Mathchops.
Yeah. And maybe I should ask quickly, like, do you see a certain score range from students? I mean, are they typically like 1,200 going to 1,400 kind of thing, or is it all over the map for you guys?
I think that's probably right in the middle. We certainly see a lot of lower ones. We see definitely some higher ones. I mean, we used to see plenty of lower ones. Now with test optional as a thing, some of those lower students just won't prep at all, but plenty still will. So
yeah,
it varies for sure.
So I think Colin, you reached out to me first. Were you the one who saw Mathchops first, or had Eric seen it and kind of like dispatched you to check it out? Or
A little bit of both. So like Eric had me join the tribe. And once you're in there for a little bit, it's hard not to see Mathchops. But around the same time, Eric and I were like constantly talking. Like I think it was at a point where we had 4 different math books. Like we had low level ACT, high level ACT, low level SAT, high level SAT. And it was just this arrangement of different math books. And when we have a couple part-time tutors, you can't really have them use all these different, it just, you never get the full use out of it. And then on top of that, like keeping track of everything that a student did. So we were looking for like something to do for math, and then we saw Mathchops on there. So I'm pretty sure Eric said like, hey, reach out to Mike, figure out more about this. But it was going to happen regardless. Yeah.
Actually, now that I think back, I think we were in the early stages of Colin really wanting to build something himself for math curriculum.
yeah,
And then I remember seeing Mathchops and one other kind of online math system. I was like, hey, Colin, check out these things. And he did. And Mathchops just kind of fit all the needs we had for the most part.
nice. Yeah. So did you have any like difficulty? So I've noticed with other tutors, adaptive quizzes are a little bit different than what they're used to, and it takes a little while getting used to, like maybe they're used to like Barron's page 40 concept, and then I like to use this other book, page 22. And it's a little bit of an adjustment, kind of stepping back and being like, play the level challenge this week or whatever. Did you guys have any trouble with that, or did you feel it was like a pretty natural transition, or what kind of hurdles, I guess, did you have to overcome using it?
I was spending a ton of time finding like the perfect chapters for students to do. Like after each session, I'm like looking through the array of books we have, trying to find a chapter that has certain types of problems. And it was honestly kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy just being able to do this. I also think that tutors, like I'm not sure how many tutors level themselves up on their own account. And I think just getting your level up to the pretty much the highest point makes it so much easier to assign and how to like, know how to use it with your students and understand how the games work. Like not only like the good parts, but the frustrations. So when you type an answer in wrong, like, cause you want to be able to relate to them on that.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because I think there are some tutors who kind of just haven't worked through the games themselves.
Yeah, and I think even getting up to like, because it only take a tutor 10 minutes to get to like 23 or 25 or whatever it might be. So like you have to kind of go beyond there and go to through the questions a lot of your students will be doing. Create a couple quizzes with your missed questions. Like actually use it yourself. I think to find out how to really effectively use it as a tutor is the easiest way.
Yeah, I like that. And what assignments do you guys normally give? Like if you're telling someone to do Mathchops?
So week 1 is just get your score up to where your diagnostic was. I like to say like work until you're feeling a ton of resistance. The goal of the first week isn't really to stress yourself out or to learn to get frustrated with Mathchops. It's for us to get an idea of what we need to work on. I always tell them I hate busy work. So these, first couple hours or whatever of getting your score up is us identifying any small thing that slipped through the cracks over the years. I phrase it to them that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because I think, I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but a lot of times students will be like, I got to burn through these easy levels, but there'll always be some little thing that they miss that it wouldn't have occurred to me to ask about really, because they have a 650, like they know, whatever, distributing the negative is never going to bother them, or, some little thing like that,
Yeah. So that's generally how I phrase it. And this year it's easier than ever with COVID because there are a lot of things that have slipped through the cracks. There are a lot of students that have the 650 that randomly don't know like how to set up a proportion or, something that you would expect them to know. And then once their score's up, pretty much just category challenges. When we do a lot of practice tests, students don't get the opportunity to work on one particular type of problem all too often, like to just really take a dive into proportions, if you will. Between taking the challenge quizzes and the actual tests, they don't get that ability. So then I phrase category challenges like, hey, let's take a deep dive into these 2 or 3 things, actually give you some continuity, and then just say get as many badges as you can in these 2 or 3 things. Or sometimes I'll give them a certain level to get up to. Right. I show them my account. I'm like, yeah, it turns green when you get the badge and you never have to do it again. You have that badge forever. So right. that completion part of it, I think helps a little bit. But yeah, kind of just get the score up in category challenges and bounce back and forth between category challenges and taking the challenge quiz. But I don't use the other games all too much. I show my students the games and some of them will play them on their own.
Yeah.
I won't typically assign the other games outside of the category challenges too much though.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of this, we're always changing things and trying different things out. And I think an initial thought was like, well, I mean, all these questions are going to help you. So let's just kind of put it in the most fun structure we can. And then like maybe the time will just fly by, and that's not the case at all. Like they just want it, they want to see that score go up. So I think the most popular games are level challenge, category challenges, and then predict your score. Just things that are tied very closely to an actual score increase. But
Yeah.
so that tracks. I think younger kids, which you guys don't work with as much, but if you have like a 5th grader who hasn't done their homework or something, and then like, break the bank is great, like you can cover a lot of stuff. But for, the 17-year-old, they're just like, no.
Yeah.
But,
Which makes sense, right? If you have a 17-year-old and they are motivated to do a lot of math chops, they're probably motivated by getting a better SAT or ACT scores.
exactly. I mean, they got a lot of stuff going on junior year. So if they're going to do some, a fun video game, it's not going to be, break the bank. It's going to be, whatever, Call of Duty. I don't know if that's still popular. But,
based on what Activision just sold for, yeah, I'd say it's pretty popular.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, what would you say to other tutors? Like, what is like the main benefit of using Mathchops, or why should they switch if they have like a comfortable system with, I like this question from 74F and this one from, Princeton Review or whatever. Why should they switch over? Or maybe they shouldn't. I don't know. What do you think?
I think overall it makes things a lot easier, right? With tracking your students. I know for me, once I'm working with more than 2 or 3 students, it's really tough to remember exactly what everyone's done, what's everyone good at, what's everyone bad at. Make sure that student sees a problem that we went over 4 weeks ago, right? And that they see it again. And the stuff that Mathchops does automatically that you're not having to worry about as a tutor. And honestly, that it's almost impossible to do as well, as a human, because we don't know exactly what we talked about 4 weeks ago. So that's the huge benefit. And I mean, at the end of the day, we want kids practice as much as possible. Like our model is around practice tests. So if I could find a way to have my student do 600 more questions over 8 weeks that aren't worksheets that don't really get graded, or the feedback that they get on here, like it's just much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, I think you could probably, in theory, use Mathchops in a really, really hands-on way, where you devote, half your session or 30 minutes every session to it. But what I love is that you could do that, but it allows me to be really hands-off.
Yeah.
So I can just be like, we've got this adaptive math system. It's going to figure out what you know and what you don't know. It's going to ignore the stuff you know really well. It's going to ignore a little bit of the stuff that's way too advanced for you. It's going to focus on what you need to learn. It's going to focus on like your challenge areas. It's going to catch if you're making lots of careless mistakes on a certain type of question. And it's just going to help you practice with all that. And it's going to require minimal involvement from me, which allows me to spend our tutoring sessions doing what I like to do the best, which is going over the official practice tests.
Yeah.
So for me, it's great because it just does, it allows us to be really hands off and does all the adaptive work for us.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that's been your experience. That's definitely what I was hoping other tutors would enjoy. I know for me too, like sometimes I can actually spend more time on stuff that's not math, and so like I can do more with reading or do more with science, where otherwise I would have had to just spend 20 or 30 minutes on math to cover certain concepts. But cool. Any final advice for users that are trying to use Mathchops? I know you mentioned like trying to level up yourself, Colin. Is there anything else you would suggest that new users do in order to use it better?
I mean, talk to your students, right? I've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't, what types of questions they like, just from asking them like, hey, how did Mathchops go this week? But really just asking them and learning from it. But some students, creating quiz for them might work the best, and other ones just kind of having them go on their own might work the best. Like the levels of degree of involvement on our side is going to vary depending on, how self-driven the student is. Some students will do 500 questions if you just show them Mathchops, and other students, you're going to have to tell them every week, hey, do this, do that, do this. Kind of just like everything else, mold it to the student, and I think you can get pretty good results from it.
Cool. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Okay, take care.
See you later.